Hi, this is Irma Mazzotti for RED 6546. This section is the Syllables and Affixes stage, and this is where you're going to find that intermediate reader. Some really quick facts about the overall student in this stage is that reading levels in this stage can span 6 reading levels, usually from 3rd to 8th grade. Your comprehension is going to move to the front of the learning environment. Basically, your student is going to really need to know, establish some background knowledge and some vocabulary. And these are key for their comprehension because now their reading is really expanding and they're starting to explore some new genres in their reading. The student is really moving now past single syllable units, and they're using chunks to decode multisyllabic words. And this stage is going to help the students identify where these syllable and morphemic breaks occur in the words. The student is now using they're finding their voice in their writing. As they write, you can clearly see your student's voice in their writing. Vocabulary is very important at the moment, and because now your student is reading and they are really finding their vocabulary now as they read. And that means that their academic vocabulary is going to start to expand as well. The domain-specific instruction of vocabulary is very important at this moment too, because now we're going to get into those science and social studies vocabulary words that they have to learn not only to just decode or try to decode, but also learning what the meaning is at this point. Morphemic analysis is one of the most important parts for your student in this stage to understand, engage, learn, and apply, because this is where that direct relationship to comprehension is going to happen. Your student needs to be able to break down the word and understand the meaning of those smaller words. Finally, word sorts and word study notebooks are rather important here because the word sort activities really become a daily routine, and they will help you with your classroom management, as we'll see in later slides. And the word study notebooks really are necessary because you build upon layer of learning in this stage, and it really assists your student in the long run. So students are now spelling most of their words correctly, and they are ready to start working with polysyllabic words. So the orthographic development in this stage includes inflected endings, syllable junctures, unaccented final syllables, and advanced affixes. One of the most important things to know is where your student is. Are they in the early, middle, or late? How will you place them? How will you set the pace? Where will you begin your sequence? So you have to start definitely by assessing your student and finding out where you place them. And depending what their score was, and then depending what they do know and what they don't know, you can establish where they should be. Word study lesson plans and routines. This is probably really key here, because when your student learns how to do weekly word studies and it becomes a routine where they're doing it daily, then they become responsible for completing much of their work independently. This gives them accountability, responsibility, and then they can also start learning how to work with a partner. And when you work with a partner, you're a partner and you can check each other, you can cross-check, you can pair students to work with each other, you can get a student who may be an ELL student, work with someone who is who's much stronger in the native language of English to be able to check them and help them out. You can pair students who are probably maybe even at the same level so that they can keep checking themselves. All of this is going to leave you free time to work with other small groups to do what's key here, which is to differentiate with those students who need more of your help, and to be able to provide direct instruction as well to those students who need it, especially those students who might have a learning disability or a student who is ELL and might need extra time with you in a small group. So getting those kids into the word study routine is really key. One of the things I really liked about our PD tool that you can get your word studies from is, as you see here on this slide, there are 2 ways to do this word study. You can provide the sheet of paper that the student cuts out and then sorts, or you can use the PD tool online where your student sorts the cards online. This is important because, for example, I have a student who has severe dysgraphia, and Cutting is very difficult for him. Gluing is very difficult for him. Copying the words down is very difficult for him. However, when he saw that he can do this online, it really motivated, and he got moving, and he actually really applied the skills rather quickly. So there is a learning curve a little bit to learning where, that you get marked wrong if you drop the card a little too early. But I find that these two things were very similar. They can be used with the same group of students, but you really can give that child who might need an accommodation an edge. So this brings us to the word study suggestions and activities section. And again, elementary students who are in this stage have mastered most of what we know as phonics. So now they're beginning to move on and learning how to approach those multisyllabic words that they encounter in reading. Again, the sequencing and pacing is important, and you need to continue to monitor your student. And in the Words Their Way books, there are some sample inventory spelling words that you can do with them, and you can monitor. So there's one for each section. So if you're working on unaccented syllables, junctures, you can go ahead and you can do a pre-test. You can do a progress monitor with another test in the middle and another one in the end, and you can see what kind of growth your student's making, which is great because you now have an artifact that you can share with the parent if you need to later on. Another great artifact is the word study notebook. Getting your student to take those word sorts, and as they work through them throughout the week, recording them into those word study notebooks. It almost becomes even almost like a dictionary for them. So the word study notebooks it's really essential because these students really need these layers to sometimes go back to. And we all know that we have students who take slides back during breaks. So having that notebook handy, almost like the old handy dandy notebook from Dora the Explorer would be great to call it. But having a word study notebook that a student can keep going back and forth and look at what the rules are, look at what follows the rule, what breaks the rule is a great thing. Using word sorts again. I know I'm repeating myself, but the word sorts are so important for the students. Not only does it help establish that routine, but really it's repetitive learning with the students. And it's the book says it, and I'm telling you because I've used it these last few weeks. The kids do not get bored with the word sorts. The kids really do enjoy them. And even those at the 6th grade level came in enthusiastic to work with those word sorts. And again, you have that opportunity to do it online if you prefer as well. Some specific word study suggestions. It's really great to get creative now because you can play games with your students and reinforce what they've learned. So, for example, the one on your screen right now, feed the alligator. I'm not going to read you the directions because I'm running out of time, but this is a great little game to play with your kids and your students. Playing games, really motivating them to apply what they're learning, to enjoy what they're learning, and to put it into an application is a lot of fun. Another great game that's not visual right there is Apple and Bushell's game board. It's on page 273 of your Words Their Way book. And I really liked this one because I think that LE and EL ending is a little tricky to teach sometimes for students to understand. And it's almost like a candy lane game. So your student is really having a good time learning about where this LE and the EL is landing in their word and their ending, and they're getting a chance to practice and have fun and apply. You can adapt any of this stuff for your ELL students, but the most important thing to know about ELL students is when you're working with ELL students, you really have to make sure that they understand the vocabulary word you're giving them. So for example, if we look at the Apple and Bushels game and we give them the word bushel, they need to understand what a bushel is. So there are some things you can do to help for the students. So if we look on this slide here, the 4-square map, I found this really interesting. It says the definition of the word in the student's own language. What does a bushel mean to this student? Do they understand what a bushel is? Is there a word for it in Spanish? Can they describe it? So I really thought that this would be a really great tool to use with ELL students. You've got also then the expansion of the synonyms, the non-examples, the examples, and the word concept. I thought it really brought it together. I also thought really neat that on your PD tool, you'll find that there are even Spanish word activities to use with those kids who, maybe aren't ready to sort the English-based language words, but they can still learn the skill in their native language. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and thank you so much for listening.